or since agege bread, however we want to say it here locally. But actually, I may not have actually validated that properly. And I think it's a great opportunity for founders to validate their business models with other stakeholders, whether these are advisors, whether these are investors, whether these are through accelerators or incubators. But certainly, these would be some of the very high-level trends, I suppose, that we do see, across various regions. But I think always important for us to remember that Africa is a huge ecosystem, and we do have varying reasons why, we may not be seeing some returns in the expected time frame as expected. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Before we go on, Onyeka, I would like to reintroduce Kennedy. I mentioned that he is CEO of Keeper, and traffic was trafficking.
I'm so sorry I'm late. I'm sorry, everyone.
So yeah, he's going to be joining us, of course, but Onyeka, you can take on the question.
Right. I'm going to piggyback off of what Ashim has said, and like she mentioned, there's quite a number of reasons as to why, investors may not see, their returns maybe at the expected times. But something that in my, just my professional experience, something that there's been one key recurring pattern, and that is a lack of understanding of the African user. That has been like a major thing that we've seen time and time again. And something that, we also need to understand so I'm just going to share briefly that my team and I actually just concluded a research report, and what we did was it was a multi-stage interview with startups in Nigeria, Kenya, and Rwanda, 7 of them, and this same issue was something that we saw recurring. So they didn't have clarity on exactly who these users were, and then they didn't also have that clarity as to how their products actually fit in the lives of these users, or actually are meeting the needs of the users. And it's just that same cycle that we keep seeing. And when we look at brands like Keeper, it's very easy for us to just think like, how did they get there? But then we look at, we focus more on, they raised 3.2 million in pre-seed, they did, 8.4 in a seed round. So we think like, that's what got the business there. But what, if anybody doesn't know, what they did was they had a founders market fit tour around Nigeria to actually understand their users, know what are the actual pain points, not just like assumptions. And so when you look at brands or companies who are successful and can actually we look at exited brands like Paystack, who actually got there. How did they get there? It's understanding. You see this recurring pattern of the ones that can actually get there or give return on investments are the ones that actually understand the users. So I think that when we are, if investors are looking at investing more in Africa, I think it's really to significantly up their chances of getting the return on investment. What I recommend is investing more in founders that actually know the users and are able to translate the knowledge of these users into real solutions that are solving real problems for the African user. So, yeah.
Thank you. Just to even add to this, it's an interesting question, and when it comes up, it's mostly just to always talk about these things because there is a very interesting opinion or understanding that businesses, founders don't necessarily get investment, or investors are not necessarily investing in Africa for X, Y, and Z purposes. I remember one of our portfolio companies in Morocco was talking about their investments and how in Morocco it's actually amazing for you to be able to get over $600,000. In comparison to, indigenous, locally, it's actually huge. But they were feeling some type of way when you look at the comparison with other, this person has $1 million pre-seed raise, one has $3 million seed raise. So those are interest. I think it's also interesting for us to have founders and startups also think about, look around you, look within your ecosystem, within your local environment. If you're doing really well, it means that you're setting the tonality for other people, other founders to be able to like, grow. And I'm glad that those are some of the things that you guys have touched upon. Question's kind of like a trick question, but yeah. That being said, moving into Kennedy, I feel like you have to talk because you just came. So I'm just going to go straight into it. So I'm saying this question is from a founder's perspective. What are the things that founders should take into consideration and be aware of when building a sustainable business in Africa?
I wish I knew the answer to that question because I'm still trying to figure it out myself. Everything I would say here is more like a note to myself in response to that question. I think the most important quality when it comes to building sustainable businesses for young founders is firstly understanding that you don't have the answers and very few people have the answers. Your investors don't, your very smart executives who you've raised money to hire, they don't. So, more often than not, it's all on you, right? But it really requires spending an obsessive amount of time with users. Like everyone says it, yeah, spend time with your users. What does that even mean, right? But it's so true, but that's just one layer. There's a temptation when you spend time with users to impose upon them what you think they should be saying or what they should want, and it's very ego-driven. The second part is really not being afraid to be someone who can stare deep into the abyss, right? Your first, second, third, fourth, fifth take at the problem is very likely not going to be the answer, right? And don't get drunk on your own Kool-Aid. And it's also very easy to be lustfully drawn to being someone who is like, oh yeah, I'm the golden kid. I understand, because investors are telling me that and everyone is telling me that. And there's an ego hit that you take when you admit that you're wrong. So I think when it comes to building sustainable businesses, what works for me, when I feel the best, when I feel, like I'm on that path, it's usually times where I'm learning from what our users are saying, shutting things down, shutting products down, going in a different direction, and doing that often and on. I think staying on the right path really requires internally, like taking micro pivots every time until you get to what it is. I think that's probably the only thing I can say, and maybe in 2-3 years when we figured more out, I'll be able to answer that question with a lot more depth. But that's what I know for now.
I love your choice of phrases. Ego kill, drunk on your own Kool-Aid. Yeah. All of those interesting phrases that is actually true. But
I took my English classes seriously.
But I feel like that's a very, I think you said you don't really know, but I think that those are very interesting things because sometimes there's a little bit of a God effect where people start feeling like, yes, I figured this out and, I know this and I've now raised and so now I am general overseer and gatekeeper and all of those things. But then you now have to deal with an ego kill. So I think you've been able to give some considerably good, roadmap towards doing that. I don't think that there is a one-size-fits-all for it. I'm going to come straight to you, Alaba. So you see this media, any small thing. This person raised $1 million. And then everybody's just going, wow, did you see that? Keeper raised. Did you see that? SpaceX is exited. Did you see that? And that's one of the drug that media has been. I won't say it's a bad thing, but it also comes with its interesting effects. Do you think that media is actually kind of supportive or detrimental to the ecosystem when it comes to these things? And how do you think it can be better managed? It can be yes or no, but yeah.
Thank you. So for us, I think the media is doing a whole lot. But I think it also depends on what the audience wants to listen to. So most times they are easily driven or attracted to the funds. And no thanks to our founders too, because most times these founders don't even want to engage with the media. Most times they are always focused on their product, building this product and, and they leave the media out of it. And they only engage the media once they are raising funds or they are probably in one deal or the other. But beyond just that, I think the media is also doing a whole lot because we now have loads of African media like pushing and telling the African stories, of these great minds, both in the continent and diaspora. So for me, I still feel, yes, we need to do more, but we are doing a whole lot. And also, just to say that most of our founders who prefer to engage with the Western media. Like, we believe that most of the African stories are still told by most of the stories, like large part of our stories are still being told by Western media, which when you ask an average founder, they prefer that to their own local or national media platforms. But beyond just that, I still feel we are doing a whole lot. And we are not just telling these stories for telling sake, but also to inspire potential entrepreneurs, people that are looking up to these guys to, okay, how do I start my business? Like, does this really, really work? People that want to transit from the corporate world to entrepreneurship or just leaving school to go into business, like, how does this really work? So beyond just telling the stories, we also provide, give them the basic resources that they need to know. So informations that will guide them, that would also help them understand how the whole thing works. So I think for us, the media is doing a lot. Yes, we can do more better, but I think we're doing a whole lot.
So I also have something to add. It's topical because I canceled my TechCrunch subscription earlier this week. I think it seemed to work, but I think for many young founders these days, and I see someone who gets a lot of requests from founders. Oh, we're trying to build an MVP. We have a 15-person team, and we're trying to raise. I'm like, why do you have a 15-person team? What the hell? And you don't have a product thing. Because for many of us, our first introduction into the tech community is through TechCrunch and through articles around fundraising. And there's a lot that it does to, I think, poison in a negative way the minds of people who potentially can be good founders. And on the flip side, intimidate those who potentially will be good founders. I do think the media has it. I think the most important role that the media plays today is telling stories from the continent to the investment community outside. But I think at best it's that. And I think we should de-glorify our TechCrunch culture. And I'm personally committing to doing that for myself, both as a founder and as a reader. That's what I think.
Yeah, just take it away.
I want to very quickly add something. Two things, maybe. One is that, look, sensationalism sells. Okay, let's be very clear. And so the media also has a monetization model that they need to follow. They need to be able to pay salaries. They need to be able to pay for whatever subscriptions they have or whatever. So it is clear that they are also giving the public what they want. At the same time, media always has had a responsibility and an obligation, as you say, to do better. And I think in the doing better, we do need to define that, and we need to say, okay, well, what is it that we need to do better on? I would love to see more richness, more meatiness in the way that we communicate. However, I also know that the media sometimes is restricted because you do get press releases from companies, and they tell you how they would like to be portrayed, because we all like to look good, right? Especially when we're in front of people. So I think there is a real avenue to say, okay, well, how do we engage with this ecosystem, with this community, to say, we want to tell the real stories. We want to give a little bit of a glimpse of what happens behind, right? So yeah, great that you've raised $1 million, but so what? So what? Wow, sorry. That was like the mic drop on the so what, right? So I think the question really has to be, okay, so what? What is the problem you're going to solve? What is the $1 million going to do? How is that $1 million going to enrich our continent? How are we going to make sure that that $1 million turns into, $10 million? Not in funding, by the way, okay? Because that's not a real number, okay? You can raise money. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have a path to profitability. It doesn't mean that you even have a path to revenues, okay? Plenty companies who are pre-revenue, who've raised millions of dollars, and you're not going anywhere. So the real question is, what is it that we want to be known for on the continent? What are the stories that we want to have out there? It doesn't matter if it's TechCrunch or it's BOA, it doesn't actually matter who is the mouthpiece, but I think as a continent, we've got to be clear on what is the narrative that we want to tell. And then we've got to do better in telling that narrative. And the narrative cannot be a Silicon Valley-ish or esque, narrative. It should be a deeper, richer narrative. And so the readers have a responsibility, as well as the media itself.
I'm gonna just play devil's advocate a little bit. I don't know if this is even devil's advocate, but okay. So I'm coming back to Yalaba. Now we've raised $1 million. It's nice and dandy. Oh God, one of the new unicorns is happening. Wow, amazing. And then we find out, and I remember like that. There was this era. There was this era of like most of these like startups. So it was like a buzz goes of like either there was firing or there was people were losing their jobs. There was just like things happening in the company. And
Storytelling. I've thought about this a lot too. The way we tell stories in tech is one of the things we inherited from Silicon Valley, right? If Dangote lets go of 100 people, it's not on the news. If Julius Berger raises like 2 billion, it's not on the news, right? And in many ways, these are the real companies that form the foundations of the economy that we live in. Where people, when you get a visa, you don't tell your neighbor, right? So why would you raise 1 billion naira and put it out in the news for all your enemies? Like, it's just something that's, no, I'm serious, it's just something that is un-Nigerian about that, right? Again, like, I think it's one of the things we inherited. And so we have to go back. What is the way to tell our stories the way that makes sense for us? The way that, because the purpose for telling stories, in my opinion, is to birth more people who can build more things, right? That's what it does for us, and that's the long-term value that it creates for us at scale. So I think we can do better.
Thank you so much. I feel like we've overflogged this media matter. Let's move on. So moving on to, this is more of a, okay, so from your experience and perspective, what is the most distinct barrier for technological innovations in Africa? And what would be your recommendations to overcome this? Number one is let's do less fintech. Let everything be less fintech. Less fintech businesses. I've said my own. Kennedy.
I think more founders. We just need more good quality founders who understand what it means to build. And I'm counting my own teeth with my tongue right now. Right, and understands the sacrifice that it takes to build something. We also need less capital. Like, it's very hypocritical of me to say, right? But I think, and I've learned this in hindsight, that there's something that privation does to you to truly prime you to build. A lot of people come to me now, oh, I'm trying to build, but I am, and this is very real conversation I had last week. Yeah, but I'm in Nairobi, and I like the greenery, and I like the living by the ocean. But still, I want to. But like, you can't have both. You can't be good at everything. You either choose that, or but like, tell me how you did it. I moved to you with my founders. We spend a lot of time in markets, like more than 2 months, and I'm not even saying that's the archetype for what it means. I know people who do way stronger things than that. So we just need better quality, rugged founders, and we don't have that at all. So, yeah.
Oyeka.
Again, this sort of ties to what Kennedy has shared. I would say better context or better contextualization. So when we speak about things that we've imported from the West here would be, you would also see like it's in the solutions. They've been imported. I'd not say that that's a bad thing, but it's like, how do you contextualize for the African markets? That's something that I sincerely feel is missing. And again, I'm going to use Keeper as an example, since we have Keeper. I'm going to use them as an example. So something interesting that they did in their research phase was also to speak to founders who have solutions like theirs, but in other emerging markets like India, right? And I think it's Kata Books, yeah? So there's that. So even though there's similarities in what they're building, what I believe was part of things that did the magic for them was that rewiring, that recontextualization, so that they are actually meeting the African users' needs, right? And so while you have Kata books, which would be focusing on digitalization of bookkeeping, you have the Keeper team who actually they focus on giving broader access to finance, right, for businesses in Nigeria. So they could easily have said like, oh, there's this thing like that. Why don't we, like replicate, or why don't we copy and paste? But they had to tweak it. So I would say better context, because when you don't have that context, why that becomes a barrier is because the African user automatically just thinks, you don't understand my problem, and so I can't let you solve that problem. So you get a pushback, so you're not able to thrive in the market, right? So I would say better context in terms of solutions that are being developed.
Okay, Alaba.
Yeah, okay, so for me, I think we need a raw market founders, just as Kennedy has said, we need founders that really go beyond just I want to build something, but build something that suits, that is market fit and can deliver and can make impact. So I think for me, I just want to say that.
Okay, Ashim.
Okay, thanks. I agree with what my co-panelists have said. I think when it comes to innovation, first maybe let's go back to how do we interpret innovation, right? Again, it's probably something like impact where we may all have a different understanding. There's a great book by Peter Thiel, 0 to 1, I'm sure some of us have read it. And he defines innovation in twofold. One, when you take something that exists and you make it better, okay? And Vanessa will agree with me, and Onyeka as well, is that when you oftentimes get decks from founders, they will in fact coin it as, I'm building the something for Africa, okay? So this is still innovation because you've seen something that works elsewhere. You've decided that, hey, I need to contextualize it and make it better for the African continent. So that is a form or a type of innovation. It is what Peter Thiel calls going from 1 to N, okay? So you've taken, it's already there, you're just now iterating it and then, sort of multiplying it. And the second type of innovation is the 0 to 1. You're taking something that does not exist and you're building something completely new. And that innovation, I think, is oftentimes one where we actually require, for instance, our regulators to really ensure that they create more of an enabling rather than a stifling environment. We need more research and development facilities on the continent. We need an easier path, affordability, to patenting. Lagos State Science Research Innovation Council, LASRIC, they actually do a great job with this. They intentionally seek out innovators, and they try and take them through the patenting process. They help them with the cost of it. I mean, just the other day, we were on a call with a founder, and he said, hey, this is my second startup. The first one, unfortunately, I couldn't close my funding round because I didn't have enough money to get the patents through, okay? So getting innovation, like the 0 to 1 innovation, over the line is a real endeavor. It requires rugged founders with grit, yes, but it also requires an enabling environment that actually allows us to have more founders, more innovators, more research, more people who are saying like, okay, I want to contextualize for the African continent. I've realized that our problems are unique to our ecosystems. We've got to make sure that we are innovating for us. You know how they say, by us, for us, right? But in order to get more of that side of innovation, I really believe that we have to hold the regulators to provide some of those environments for us.
Very great points from everybody. I feel like if we collaborate everything will be fine. Ish. I have a detour question. Would you say, to an extent, that given, and I'm talking about the noun, which is our current climate in the country, would you s- would you say that we are set back ourselves maybe 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, in comparison to where we were, I mean, before all of this was happening or started happening? Because by the time we're going back to, I don't know, after post-political climate, are we going to now start from scratch to start rallying everybody? Would you, it's a question I'm going to ask everybody, and everybody can give me like their one-liners. Would you say that we've set ourselves back by 5 years? And by that would mean that political climate definitely is not a standalone from economic climate. So would you say we've set ourselves back by 5 years, considering? And if so, what is your one-liner? I'll start with you, Kennedy.
Well, what exactly are we talking about? Is it like the kidnapping and banditry, fuel scarcity, cash scarcity? Which of them?
Everything.
All of them.
Everything.
Have we set ourselves back? Like, I think if you put Nigeria on a graph, right, things have consistently gone. Broadly, if you zoom out, it's been that way. I do think in certain respects, and maybe this is contrarian, I do think we have decent regulators. I've had to interact with them a little bit more in the past 15 months or so. And they're not as unreasonable as we think they are. All right. With everything happening now, I do think there's a very significant execution flaw. The rationale behind it, look, I think it makes a lot of sense, and there's a lot of positive intentionality behind it. I just think it's poor execution, and our civil service is not known for its great execution. So I hope we can fix that. I do hope we can come back from it. Usually in Nigeria, once the prices of things go up, they never come down. But I hope this is cash, the price of cash comes down really specifically.
So that's a no. We do not go back. We're fine. Or maybe.
I don't know that it's one of those binary answers, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. But do you have a binary answer?
Absolutely no. But yeah, so I feel it's a setback for us, definitely. But I also want to see it from a positive standpoint, that it's also a learning curve, for us. And I think we can always improve on what we currently have and do better going forward. So it's a learning curve for us.
I don't know about learning curve for Nigeria. I feel like we're too resilient. It's like money. It's like when things go up, when inflation goes up, doesn't come down. We've learned. We're now tough. I don't know about coming, but that is learning curve. Anyaka.
Yeah, I'm with Alaba on this. I do think, well, yeah.
Just give us some.
Yes, sorry about that. Yes, there's been some setback, but I think like it just like it's what he said is a learning curve, and I hope that, like we can come out of it, or at least, I don't want to say, because the harder things get, it's almost like you have to innovate for, like repeatedly layer innovations on top of, so that you can survive. But I'm hoping that we can innovate enough to, like that causes some really radical innovation to, it's a radical innovation is birthed out of, the problem or the things we're experiencing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Claire, let's finish it.
I don't know that there's a binary answer to this. So I'll argue both points. Yes, we have setback. Certainly the political climate is not removed from the economic climate. And the economic climate, not just in Nigeria, not just in Africa, but worldwide, has simply just not been very positive. For Nigeria especially, if we're looking at the local context, we've really had several headwinds. We've been downgraded as an economy. Our inflation rate is second to none. Our currency has depreciated, okay, not as much as some others in Africa, but unfortunately that's not a measuring stick. We are persistently getting poorer as a nation, which means that we have less money in our pockets. We have less money to educate our children. We have less money for health care. And that invariably means that, we don't have money to do anything else, okay? We are literally on the very bottom of that pyramid of needs, okay? But I would vehemently argue, no, it has not set us back. And I would say that because, one, as you've said, a volatile environment always gives room for innovation. Even the POS people, are they not innovating? They found a way to make money. Hey, why are you hating, you know? They have said, because they're looking at it, time value of money, right? They're like, okay, I've spent time trying to get this cash, therefore, you gotta pay me for my time, because you don't want to stand in the queue, right? But I have. So therefore, there is innovation. We can argue whether or not it's a great innovation, whether it's fair, and all of those points, right? But a business is business, and it's not always fair, depending on which side of business do you stand on. But I would also argue that no, we haven't actually been set back because we have, I believe, over time, in fact, built an incredibly strong ecosystem in this country. We have, you know, thanks to a lot of people who've put in a lot of work, actually been able to push forward a lot of regulation that is now more enabling. There are only 4 or 5 countries in Africa who have a startup bill. Nigeria is one of them. It is a big deal, okay? Yes, we know that execution and enforcement is not always great, but we've got to start from somewhere. And I also believe that we do need to, as Kennedy have said, you know, sometimes we have to be a little bit more open-minded when we are also you know, working with the regulators, because the headwinds, as we said, are quite strong, right? So, yes, maybe the strategic intent was noble, the execution and planning was abysmal. However, the question is, what do we do with it? How do we innovate from it? How do we learn from it? Yes, we're resilient, we're gritty, and that's the kind of founders that we need in order to continue to build this ecosystem.
Sorry. Okay. I'm just going to take questions from the crowd. If anyone has any questions before we round up. Can someone give her a microphone, please?
Do we have a mic somewhere?
Need a mic.
You have
No
question,
mics.
raise up your hand though, because after I think Ifoma's question might be 5.
Yeah, like, sorry. Hi, everyone. My name is Ifoma Nwobu. I'm a founder. I'm co-founder of SendStack. It's digital logistics infrastructure for Africa. And this panel has actually confused me more than it has educated, motivated, anything, because there's so many things that trickle down. As a founder, like, I asked myself, why am I doing this? There's so many other things I could be doing. But first of all, we have investors who want to hear names. They want to hear the big names. They want to hear if you went to big league schools.
You're talking to the wrong people.
No,
You're talking to the wrong people,
girl.
girl.
How many of these people even exist, right? So you have like investors who first want to hear who you know. But then I don't know anybody because I'm solving a real problem. Like, I'm not out here like making friends with the big guys. But then we see, like, real talk, this happened last week. I was asking for an intro to an investor, and they were like, oh, you just have to call this name, say you know this person. And I'm like, I don't know anybody, so I can't talk to this person, right? And then you now also have, Kennedy said something like, oh, he's still figuring it out, yada, yada. But then we speak to, like, people a lot of times that want us to sound like we know it all. So there's a lot of posturing, even in, like, pitching your solution. There's so many lies that you have to tell. And then there's now like the issue of how rigorous it is to actually get through to get this investment for your company. So damn right, once I raise 1 million, everybody must know because that is hard work. Like, that took me like 3 months, 5 months, 6 months of not paying attention to my team, of doing like meetings back to back to back. So you must know because it's part of the hard work. How long I spend taking congratulations from other people is a separate conversation, but you must congratulate me. Like, so you can see how everything trickles down. Right now, I'm a founder in logistics, and guess what? With the news, nobody even wants to speak to you. And we've had paying customers from day 0. All that is needed is scale this thing, expand. We have there's excess demand. And then there's now the other thing of Silicon Valley. We like posh products. Americans have gotten to the stage where they're building stuff for their pets, but then like little things like logistics for commerce, for e-commerce, is still a problem. But people don't even want to hear that. Once you're a logistics founder, because the people who have done before you and tried made mistakes, therefore this industry, this sector is cancelled. And then you claim to be an agnostic, industry agnostic investor. Is a lie. You just want me to pivot to fintech and still brand it as logistics so that you can invest. So that, like, there's just so many things, and I'm not sure this is a question. This is clearly not a, it's not a question.
It's not a question.
But then you now have like so many people who are demoralized. Like Kennedy said, we need more rugged founders. But do you know how much this can take from you?
Well, yeah.
And just to founders as well, I like to say, look, if your company shuts down because you didn't close a round, maybe you need to reevaluate, right? Because for me now, the way I think of it is like, how did our parents build businesses that lasted 10 years, 20 years? They're paying salaries. Those businesses sent their children to schools. They were not unicorns. And sometimes when I say these things, like, oh, you're thinking too small. Don't you want to exit? Don't you want to be a unicorn? But those are the things, those are the vanity metrics that we set so high first before impacting the really like grass level people. And so I'm just like, yeah, what's the truth, guys? Like, somebody is lying. I don't know if it's founders, investors, media, but there's a disconnect somewhere, and I'm not impressed.
Okay, so thank you
I think
so
she
much,
needs
Ifeoma.
a big
she
group
does.
hug.
Yes, she does. I think this is one of the conversations that we've been on panels and we've talked about,
Oh my
and
gosh.
it's way too many times. So I'm just
Yeah.
gonna let you do that.
I hear you, and I'm sure the experiences haven't been pleasant because it clearly comes out from what you say. And I absolutely agree with you. There is a lot of posturing. However, I also believe that every pot can find its lid. Every founder can find its investors. And if you're speaking to investors who are looking for you to claim big names, then they're not the right ones for you. If you're not that type of a person, they're just not the right investors. I had a conversation yesterday with somebody who's done some research on the African continent and of unique investors. And they have a list of 700 and something institutional unique investors. I'm not talking about business angels. I'm not talking about family, friends, uncles, aunties, and all of that, okay? Institutional firms. There are investors out there, and there are investors out there who are willing to go on value and merit, and not on, oh, who do you know? Because if you know the person, then I don't even know what that means, to be honest. I don't know how that helps me, because you know that person doesn't mean your business is good. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. So I do think that, and I do say this quite a lot, that as founders, and this may sound harsh, you got to do your homework better, okay? You got to look at how many investors are out there, who are the investors who actually are truly sector agnostic, because actually there's not a lot of sector agnostic investors out there. A lot of investors are very clear in what sectors or verticals they want to invest in. And they're also, very clear on what type of business models they invest in. So if it's a B2C model, maybe they're not interested. If it's a B2B, maybe that's more for them. Maybe they're only doing B2G. So, I think really dig deep into who these people are. And I don't think that there's a problem in reaching out cold, as it's called. Of course, it may not always have the outcome as you wish, because of course, if Vanessa introduces somebody to me, it may be easier, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to invest, okay? So the value still needs to be there. So I think that would be the main thing that say, really do your homework on the investors, because there are several investors out there who are honestly just absolutely stellar and who are not looking for the posturing. In fact, typically when somebody tells me they've got it all figured out, I know you're bullshitting me, because there is no way, because you don't, none of us do, right? That's why we're all here. That's why we're trying to build solutions. That's why we're trying to do better every day. And that's why we're trying to work together and collaborate on it. So, I think it's a big zoo out there, but, there is a lid for every pot. You just got to find your lids and the ones that are true partners and, share the same values with you. And I think then you probably have a better experience.
Okay, question. I think one more question and then we can call it.
Hello. My question is for Kennedy and Onyeka. So, talking to users is paramount, is almost formidable for your PMF, for you to achieve PMF. How do you talk to users at scale? Say, you are launching a product for the African market. It's easy to talk to everybody in this room, right? So now you're running a $100 million valued business, 5 million users. How do you talk to users and get valuable feedback?
Do you have that problem right now? Like, I'll come work for you.
No, not right now.
Okay.
Soon, I hope.
So to get started, I think when you're at that point, the point is made, right? You have incredible product market fit. You have 5 million users, and how to find and talk to them will no longer be a problem. Ideally, you would have a user research team. You would have very significant maturity on your product teams. So that conduit of information between your users and you will continue to be there. You probably will have very high ticket customers who even you as founder, you're spending a lot of time with, and they're influencing how you build your product. But I think usually a lot of the talking to your user advices happens early on because one, you probably don't know what you're building. Secondly, you don't know who your users are. And thirdly, you don't know how to talk to them even when you're talking to them. You don't know how to drive the conversation to derive value from it in a way that is not biased. So if you get to the point where you have 5 million users, congrats, bro, you've won.
Yeah, I think just off of what he said as well, if you're at that stage already, it means that you already have gotten some reach. And I would think that you would not be doing it just in the same spot in which you started. So you have people or partners, that have their eyes, more or less like you have a well-rounded view of things, right? So you're able to leverage those people, even if you still want to have conversations with users. I think it becomes so much easier as well, like with the digital space as well. And if you've built a brand, that makes it so much easier because people naturally just tell other people and people are constantly like giving you feedback. So you are going to have an overflow at that point in time because you're not running after it. It's literally like the ripple effect is already, it's happening.
Thank you very much. I'm getting daggers from the guys from. So, well, our panelists are still here. So if you want to have like a one-on-one, you can actually talk to them. Ashim, don't run away. But yeah, I think we've come to the end of this very, in quotes, confusing session. But thank you so much to all of my panelists. Yeah, I feel like I've carried some information away. Kennedy has made them now, they've blacklisted me from my community. After I go home now, they'll stop calling me. And then I lose my job. I'll come and work for you guys. But thank you so much. This was such an insightful panel. I hope everybody had a good time. So everybody just looks quiet, like as if I'm giving you something to think about in your life. Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know if I will taking pictures. All right, I will take pictures. All right, everybody. Oh, she has a question. She said a minute, I promise. Okay, sorry. Oh yeah, go.
Hi, my name is Estelle Hay. I work as a venture partner at a VC company stroke studio, right? So I once had a community called Fail For